Hello and welcome to the Business of Betting podcast. Today I'm joined by Dan Kelly. Dan, thank you very much for coming on.
Before we get into this episode, make sure you follow us on Twitter, @bettingpod, and check out the website, businessofbetting.com. Guest suggestions are much appreciated. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Betfair Proprietary Limited. Betfair operates a betting exchange and is licensed in the Northern Territory of Australia. Residents of Australia can join Betfair by visiting betfair.com.au and support this podcast by using promo code BOBPOD. Please gamble responsibly. So thank you for listening and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Business of Betting podcast.
Today I'm joined by Dan Kelly. Dan, thank you very much for coming on.
Hey, Jake, thanks for having me on. Big fan of the podcast, mate, and you've had an amazing array of guests, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it, mate.
I'm certainly looking forward to it. I had a few weeks off, which was nice, and looking forward now to get back into it for this season. And being from Australia myself and from Melbourne, it's good to get back to the roots and talk about some racing, some betting, and a bit about your past. So tell us, how did things get rolling for you in the betting world?
Well, I was probably along the lines of being born into it, I suppose you could say. My grandfather was an owner and a trainer. My father, an owner, breeder, racing administrator. But I'm the oldest of five, and I said, well, I got it. I got the bug, but I've got four siblings who've really got not much interest in racing at all. So I say I've got the five full doses. So all I can remember as a kid, I've got great memories of, being around horses. Dad had horses at home and trained locally. And I grew up in a little town called Woodend, which is about 45 minutes north of Melbourne. There was a Woodend race club when I was a kid, but it folded in 1982 and merged with Kyneton. So Dad was a committee member there, and then obviously moved up to Kyneton where he was a committee member and president. But we had a family business in town, a produce store, hardware store, petrol station, and so from as early as I can remember, 8 years old, I used to work there on a Saturday morning, and if the Kyneton races were on a Saturday afternoon, I'd tag along with Dad. I'd get my wages, which might have been $10 or $20, and he'd head up to the committee room, and I'd be there for the whole day on a race course. And it was just, I used to say, people, was just like Disneyland for me. I loved the horses. I loved the books, the colour of the bookmakers, the jockey silks, if I wanted to, even back in those days, and have a little bet and grab one of the other committee members. If I see them come down to have a bet before the race, I'd ask them to put a buck or two on a horse for me. You could watch the 2,000 metre and the starts in the straight there, and you go up and watch the greats cash back. And so I had the bug from a pretty early age, Jake, and I just loved it. Couldn't get enough of it, really.
So what was it like teenage years, high school, that period of time? Were you always still involved, or did you take a bit of a back seat as you went through those years?
No, it just grew and grew. It was a great era. I sort of grew up in the mid '80s through those years. So I mean, it was an era of great horses, Bone Crusher and Vo Rogue and other champions, and so I was quite following it and closely all along. And I ended up, my father went to Assumption College, which is a proud sort of sporting boarding school at Kilmore here in Victoria, and I sort of wanted to follow on pretty quickly. I was a bit of a scallywag at primary school, and they told my parents that I needed another 3 years at home, so I didn't end up going to Assumption till year 10, and then I got there, and it was great. It was footy, cricket and racing, really. It was kids from all over country Victoria with similar interests, and we lived together and lived, eat and breathed each other's company. That's why we were such a successful college football team, but there's a lot of the guys loved racing as well, so we just used to listen to it on the radio. We used to get the librarian to sneak our bets down to the TAB. I played SP bookie for my year level in my dormitory. A couple of other well-known guys, particularly Matt Tripp, who obviously now is involved with Bet Easy and things like that. They were a year above us, and they were doing the same in the year level. So right through, we just had a great. I grew up around sports, but particularly racing it never dulled, mate. It just grew.
Were you making any cash on the side, bookmaking or betting at that time? Was it all recreational fun, and it was sort of ups and downs, but pretty small stuff?
It was fun. I never had to call for reinforcements from home from a bad strip out in the book or anything, like one other particular guy did. But No, it was just fun, and we had kids at school whose families owned horses, so they used to tootle off to, so they'd have a big tip, you're tipping it today, and we'd load them up with 20 bets, and he'd have to write down, have 5 each way for Dan, 10 each way for Shane, and then he'd come back if the horse won and dish it all out, and yeah, so no, it was all just fun. It was $10. You got a little allowance to go to boarding school, obviously a cash allowance off your parents, and you just did your best with it, and it was a race we had a little newspaper shop there, one of the brothers ran, and it was a race down there on a Friday morning to grab the first Herald Sun to get the form guide, and it was just to see how long it could last before the first teacher would get it off you in the class, and Kelly, that's contraband, show me what you got under the desk, another form guide. Anyway, so so no, it was just good fun, mate. It was just great memories, They told us at the time, you'll wish you'll look back on these boarding school memories great, and you're a young kid and you go, yeah, but as you get older, you just reflect on them with great memories, mate.
So what about once you finished high school and you sort of had to become an adult? Were you thinking that racing was something you couldn't possibly do and you have to go into the corporate world or finance or start your own store like the folks, or what was the next step for you?
Yeah, so the next years I sort of didn't do that well at school. I sort of scraped through, obviously with my few distractions elsewhere, and no, I sort of gambling wise sort of wasn't the first port of call. I was sort of trying to get going, and I got sort of going through my connections to Dad's work. So I was a wire and fencing company actually who dealt with my father, gave me my first little job, and I was just living pay to pay and punting and losing, and everything you do as a 19-year-old, you just have a crack. And it wasn't until about a year later I could sort of play a bit of footy, and I landed at Caulfield Football Club. And obviously it was being Caulfield, there was a good footy club. There's a lot of racing people around that club, and born and bred in Caulfield, and so I got through the connections there. I got involved. I sort of started heading towards the gambling side of things, but my first actual job was at the Crown Casino in that area. I started there as a dealer. Funnily, I met my wife there training actually. Funnily enough, so that was good. But so I trained up, and then I sort of got into dealing and learned all the 3 games, and that's blackjack, roulette, and baccarat. And once you learn baccarat, you can get into the VIP area. So I was sort of soon I was up to the mahogany room, which was terrific, and then sort of supervising games there as a supervisor. Yeah, so that was good fun, and a great place to be, because Crown Casino was just kicking off back then. It was sort of around the year late 90s, 2000. It was going gangbusters,
Yeah, it's, I'm guessing, still one of the biggest casinos in Australia. And tell us about the mahogany room. Not many people have probably been into an elite high rollers room like that. It was probably an interesting place to spend some time.
It was really interesting. Jake saw many things, many different people. Chinese New Year was just absolute chaos, especially on a baccarat table. They're 10 deep, and as it's Chinese, it's lucky to gamble in Chinese New Year, and if you win, that provides you hopefully with a prosperous year. That was chaotic. But I was sort of on the morning. I got on the morning shift, which was a 4 a.m. till midday shift, pretty quickly. So it was a bit quieter there, and they did what they have got there. They've got what's called salons in the hotel. So they've got an area called level 88 up sort of. It's not actually level 88, but that's what they call it, the lucky number 8 reasons. Mm-hmm. And that's where the VIP sort of hang out, and there's some little private salons there. So yes, it was a good gig, because not much had happened. The TV would be on, but you had to be there and open if a VIP was in town, because a good chance at up past 6 in the morning when he wakes up, he throws his dressing gown on, and in he comes and gets $1 million credit and starts having $100,000 on a hand of baccarat.
Wow. And
then at 7:30 he gets a tap on the shoulder, come and play golf. So okay, he's off to the private golf course, and then you wait there again until he arrives back about 11 o'clock as soon as he got back from golf in his golf gear, starts betting again. And yeah, so mate, you just lose the value for money there, mate. It was bloody interesting stuff and entertaining. So yeah.
Was it helpful to learn about those other games, blackjack and roulette and baccarat, some of the strategy around that, and I guess some of the odds calculations in your head on the fly?
Yeah, well, they still had some card counters they permitted back then, play who didn't do too much damage, so you sort of learnt that there was an edge there, but blackjack's pretty much a house game. Roulette was a great game to deal because of all the actions and the big table and the get high, but But the main one they all play is the baccarat. It's the lowest margin for the house, obviously, and it's an exciting game, particularly with the squeezing of the cards and things like that. And I was sort of early 20s here, so it was really a great starting point to get into sort of seeing that sort of wagering. But at the same time, I always had the passion for racing. I was still betting and losing and living as a single guy and living pay to pay and things like that. So I got Caulfield. I had a good mate I met through Caulfield Footy, who was actually one of my groomsmen at my wedding, Peter Paddy Davies, and I met him through Caulfield Football Club, and he was a bookmaker's clerk and in Melbourne, but he also used to travel interstate. A couple of the ex-bookies clerks had sort of moved to Darwin and Cairns and lived up there, and he used to go up there and help them out and sub a second licence or something on their big days, Darwin Cup Day or Cairns Amateurs Cup Day. So he asked me to go along one day and said, come along and jump on the bag, I need some staff. And I just loved it. It was so much fun, throwing the bag cash and betting and watching it all happen. And luckily enough, I got back to Melbourne, and a bookie a good mate of his called John Dow asked him if he hadn't knew any staff, and I think this was about Spring Carnival 1998 or something like that. And so Paddy sort of said, yeah, give this young kid Dan a go. And it was the front lawn in Flemington on Oaks Day, and it was just, I'd never seen anything so big. They were queued up to bet, and Johnny said, make sure you look after everyone, but grab the notes and just be nice to the little ladies, having $1 each way. But if you see 100 or 50, grab it and just get the bets down. And yeah, they were queued up from the moment 15 minutes before the first to the last race. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. And again, I just loved being a part of it. And then I was just lucky through John. Another bookie, Anthony Doughty, who's still a leading rails bookmaker now and a great educator of young guys at the track. Obviously, I think asked a similar question to John if he knew any young guys, and John said, yeah, you can give this young Dan a go. So the next Spring Carnival I worked for Anthony, and that got me going, mate.
There's a lot to pick up and learn by osmosis being at the track, I would imagine, and it seems like a lot of people are 10, 20, 30, 40 years involved in racing. It must just be a all-consuming, enjoyable and fun place to be.
It was. Yeah, it was. You just couldn't, again, especially me being with my love of it and everything, I just couldn't get enough of it. Every race day, I'd just love being there and, surrounded by, a heap of your peers, all the bookies, watching all the different ways they operate, all the clerks, we're bookies, clerks all sort of hung out together. We all got out after the last and get out for a drink and out for dinner, and but also all the different things you learn. I was on the bag, so you learn the cash and how to count cash and deal with the customers, and then you move to what's called a groundie, so where you're protecting the bookie, letting me know what horses are going off, what's happening in the ring, what punters are backing what, and also having bet backs. Anthony will say, quick, go and back this horse to win 30,000. So off you go, trying to take the best odds. And then you move on to the phone. There was phone betting. Everyone was betting with phones as sort of pre-internet bookies. So the phones and looking after the phone clients, getting their bets down, putting them in the computer was changing from handwritten to computers back then. So I sort of got a real good grasp of all aspects of sort of OnCourse bookmaking through working for Anthony, for sure.
And then what about the corporate bookmaking as it sort of is known today? Was that something that slowly came about, or did it come with a loud crash and bang, and then before you knew it, OnCourse was sort of overtaken pretty quickly?
No, it was pretty slow. It was through. So I was on course sort of from early 2000s. So the action was huge on track then. We had huge bookies. Bill Graham, Frank Hudson, Ray Swanee. I mean, they were all at the peak of their powers. They were massive bookies, and then there was massive cash. Everyone was betting at the track. There were some really big punters. Most of them, a lot of them now, locked up, you could say. But anyway, there's a lot of cash at the races. The tracksuit gang, they were betting at the track a lot. A couple of other guys were huge punters. That's all changed now, of course, but it was huge action back then. Anyway, so it was great. It was great. It was big stuff. So I sort of did all that, and then Mark Reed, I think, IAS moved from Darwin back to Melbourne sort of around 2006, 2007, and he was the sort of leading off-course internet bookie, and he was just starting out. So I saw a job advertised with him in, I think it was 2008, just after I got married, and I started off there.
So do you remember the first day when you went in there, what they told you to do? Was it completely different to your on-course bookmaking role when you went into the office in more of a corporate environment?
Yeah, well, when I had my interview with Mark, the job was as an analyst and a trader, and he was sort of more interested in my analytical skills to start with, and so I said I was watching VHS videos at the time and showed him a couple of the little shortened comments I was doing and things like that. So he said, well, your first job is going to be doing video comments on Hong Kong racing. We're going to get serious on Hong Kong racing, and I wanted to make some good video comments. And he just bought out a betting company, a betting group called Ferncourt, who are some very clever punters from South Australia, and I think it was a bit of a you can't beat them, buy them sort of thing. He knew how successful they were, so and he bought all their IP. So he said, and well, with doing these video comments, here's a new way of doing them. Here's all the codes and everything. So I sat with those codes and did 12 race cards twice a week at Hong Kong, and it was a great grounding. It was a bit grueling. Everyone else, all the other guys were sort of blasting away on the races over on the trading floor, and I was sitting there, just banging away on banging in all these hundreds of Hong Kong video comments. But in hindsight, it was a terrific grounding for me in that respect, and an education in that art form which was really strong back then.
What was Mark's sort of mantra and business model? Was he happy to take on even pretty smart punters, or was he careful and really wanted to know his players?
No, he was happy to play all comers to certain levels. That was the beauty of the thing. The traders had real autonomy was more playing the horse than playing the man. So we had a great database, form guys, clever guys doing the form. So he was, we were more play the horse than play the man. But obviously the really clever guys I had some restrictions on, but yeah, it was a real battle of trader versus punter. And then, that was all recorded and charted. So you get your trader reports, how you went against the hot clients, how you went against the not hot clients, and then your bonuses. If you beat the hot clients and you had a good year, you could also bet for the company. So all your bonuses were assessed on all that in the wash up at the end of 12 months. So yeah, the traders had real drive to do well and put up accurate markets and things like that. Where it's all changed a bit now, but we'll get to that.
Tell me about the group of traders that were there. Were they all very much experts and probably could have done pretty well on their own if they did that at that time?
It was a really interesting group of guys. So Mark liked to surround himself with guys, clever guys. So actually, coming from a racetrack background, there's only a couple of us in there. There was guys with marketing degrees, law degrees. Obviously, a previous guest on your show, Mark Roden, was there. He was another probably a racetrack background. But a lot of clever guys who was taught to do the form from scratch by Mark or by his other Gerard Toomey, who was his sort of 2IC in the form area, really clever guy, and so trained up with no preconceived ideas coming from beforehand, and to do the form. So some really clever guys were in there, and also complemented by a few of us guys who had a racecourse background. So we complemented each other.
Rethink the way you see sport. Every action or play can be represented by a series of numbers. When you analyse this data, patterns begin to emerge. If you follow these patterns and develop systems, you can play the game within the game. Betfair.com.au. Gamble responsibly.
So transitioning now to your current situation, was a lot of the stuff that you learnt and went through and experienced whilst at IAS really valuable to what you're doing now, or is it a different mindset and skill set to be a punter versus more of a trader and bookmaker?
Yeah, it's changed. I reckon that was 10 years ago when I started there. So it's sort of held me in good stead up until probably recent times. But it's an ever-changing marketplace and things like that. So I went. So just back to that time. Mark IAS was brought out by Paddy Power when they came to Australia to buy Sportsbet, and they bought Sportsbet and bought IAS as well. So I sort of continued on there to be a senior trader, but then I could see sort of the way things were going. The form and the analysis side of things was going to go by the wayside for data, the maths guys and risk management. So I left there in about 2012, 2013, and I thought I had a good grounding with that video comments and the good understanding that I could make it on my own. and it was being good for that. It was a real good edge in it in those first couple of years, but it's gradually I heard on Rob Waterhouse's podcast with you. You asked him the question about video comments, and he seemed to say their value has nearly eroded due to everyone can see them now. You know, back 10 years ago, I was getting them on VHS privately, and not many people were getting them.
Yep.
So you just have to, realise, and that sort of my figures show that things weren't as good as they were back in that era. So you sort of got to make some adjustments. So the good core basics still hold me in good stead, but you have to change to what's going on in the marketplace as well.
Do you have a sense if the Paddy Power style, or let me put it this way, do you think that there's lower risk in the Paddy Power style but similar level of profitability, or is there a bit of a gap between what Mark was doing in the IS days and what they're currently doing?
I think with the way the market is, if there was the same pool of punters who were betting back then in 2008, you'd say, well, Mark's way would hold up really well. Not unfortunately, but the way the market's changed in the last 10 years, the last 3 or 4 years, is with the computer model teams getting sharper and sharper, more dominant in the market. They're really hard to beat over time. So I think it's just the way it's gone, that if you let them on, they will beat you over time. You know, they will beat you over time no matter what position you take or how you attack them. So, I think they've said that's the best way to deal with it is to really tighten down and use their IP and things like that. But so I don't think, while I'd like to say form and having autonomy over the book and picking and choosing who you bet and things like that, how much you bet them would hold up for a singular trader. It's probably a more profitable way now, the way the corporates are attacking it.
So take me through your current approach and your sort of day-to-day lifestyle. What works for you now with what you're currently doing?
Well, I'm sort of going through a bit of a transitioning phase at the moment, Jake. I've sort of, as you said, I sort of came to the realisation that, like I said previously, sort of 75% of what I did was in the video comments and things like that. So with that sort of edge, eroding and things like that, I'm sort of looking to do, not to do something else, but to look at different areas. So I'm sort of going to trying to get into the data side of things. And I've sat here as I say, I've really sat at the coalface every day for the last 10 or 11 years. And then I've got another 10 years sort of experience before that. But, I'm watching thousands and thousands of races, watching the betting on them, most importantly, doing the post-race on them, doing the post-race analysis, doing those video comments, putting ratings on all those horses, looking at all the results, making sure all those results make sense. If there's 100 to 1 chance, one somehow, why did it win? The favourites have failed, why they failed, things like that, and trying to use all that, what I've learned, and then trying to get that into some sort of, at the end of the day, some sort of automation, area. So I'm working on that at the moment, but basically day to day, I'm still doing the format. I'll have a look at the meetings in the morning, look for some, I'll have some horses that might have been flagged and races that are flagged. So I'll sort of look at the races in that sweet spot and do some form and try and get an edge. But that's just getting tougher there. So as I said, I'm trying rather than sit on my hands and, I'm trying to sort of get something else up and going to have a crack.
How much more efficient do you think the markets have got over your time? Do you think there's a vast disparity from when you were maybe on track to now? Do you think the computer modelers and the teams involved in that have really made the margins thinner and thinner in terms of the efficiency?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's chalk and cheese. I remember when, was this back when Betfair first came to the track years ago, and some of the old time bookies just didn't use it or look at it. They were successful in what they were doing. And then along with that came the proliferation, then there was the bigger proliferation of the computer team prices and they're sending guys to the track and, those old bookies who did unfortunately they went broke and then 2008, it's completely changed from, as I said, from sitting in the office back then to what we're doing. And we've, the only ones getting videos back in the mid 2000s to now everyone can see the videos, everyone can see the sectional times. And then the computer teams are striving to get smarter and stronger. And as I said, when I sit and look at thousands of races and watch the betting, then watch the result, they're so good. It's just terrific. I mean, it's great. It's great for them, but I admire them. I mean, it's terrific. I was very lucky enough to be invited to have lunch with Jelko one day. I've got a mutual friend who just out of the blue said to me, "Look, I'm flying down to Hobart to have lunch with Jelko. Would you like to come?" And of course, I jumped at it. How often would you be able to sit on a table with Jelko? And I was lucky to have the seat next to him on a table of six, and it was terrific afternoon. We were stuck into the red, and he was telling stories right from the start, right through, and that was a great experience. This industry, we meet lots of great people. It was a great experience to meet him. So just everything's changed, mate. And I think you've got to change with the times. As I said, with the old bookies who went broke when Betfair and computer models started betting, the money started getting to the track. If you sit on your hands, it might go past you. So, times have definitely changed, mate, and keep changing.
So how do you, if you can identify that and you know that that's happening, how do you implement that into what you're doing? Do you have to factor the market price in much more than you used to? If it was previously, an 8-to-1 chance you thought was 4-to-1, and then you would have a bit of a crack at it. Maybe now you've got to factor in the market a bit more and say, well, it's probably a 6 or 7-to-1 chance, not a 4-to-1 chance.
Yeah, I'd rather be with those. I'd rather be with the teams and the horses they back than against them.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got one, 4-to-1, and they look to be charging into the 7-to-2, then I'm happy to tune in. I'm happy to tune in. I don't have to wait for it to get it to 550 or something like that. I'll say, I'll back, the way how accurate they are and how dynamic they are. This is probably a 5-to-2 chance. So if I like it and I want to take short odds, so I use them as a guide and put more on. And then if that horse is express out in the market, well then have something on it, but have less on it. They're telling you, no, this is for one reason or another. They're very good on their maps. They're charting the early speed of horses, the horses' barrier manners, whether they get in and out of the gates, and what horse from a wide gate has got speed to cross a horse from an inside gate. They're excellent at that. So sometimes we can sort of trying to kick up for a horse. You can say, well, I think you'll go forward, and they'll say, no, he's going to be behind this horse. And when you watch it, and then when it happens, you say, well, they were telling you, the betting was telling you. So I'd rather be with them than against them for sure.
So when you think the betting was telling you, do you think that is something that you can only pick up with the experience that you have, or is that something that anyone can sort of start now and know in sort of 6 or 9, 12 months?
Well, I'd like to think that that 10,000 hours or whatever they say, 10,000 races, 10,000 hours counts for something. But I think in an era of data, it's a lot. This is a very data driven. These guys aren't doing the foreman races. This is all data driven and things like that. So I would think, sharp young guys coming into the industry, focusing on data, would have it be a bit easier for them than it was for us guys coming in with our, back 20 years ago and things like that to get hold of it quicker. So I think, definitely with the data numbers game it is this day and age, that it wouldn't take young guys as long, with passion and hunger to get a good grasp of making something profitable out of it.
So what are some of the things you're considering, if you don't mind sharing, about sort of advancements to your process, some improvements that will help with automation or will help with, collection and inputs, and you can use those variables that you've developed over the years to fine tune?
Yeah, well, look, with the market being so efficient, one of my key starting points is the SP. I just think it's more with how clever they are and how dominant on the market. I think it's a really it's the most useful it's ever been as a tool of information. So that basically SP is expected performance from the betting and then you can match that against what actually happened, the actual performance. So using that SP, so any system that in my head I come up with, one of the first things is I run an SP thing over it, and you basically, you can kick out, it'll tell you, it'll show up, any horse in this system over 10-to-1 is a complete wipe. So, first thing, and then you run the system again with all horses under 10-to-1 and things like that. I'm looking to, playing where my strengths are. I've got, I like what platforms of horses I like, which is, I don't really have much success with horses first up, but third and fourth up in distance when they're fit and the trainer's happy for them to be more forward and things like that. Well, I find I back a lot of winners in that area, so running some systems, through that. And at the moment, they're just, data and giving me pointing me selection systems, pointing me in the right direction of opportunities, hopefully. But I'd like to, work on it and build it up to something more automation, more automated wise, mate. Not 10 years, even back at Sportsbet, I used to crunch out 10-hour days I had no kids, things like that. My first son came along just when I left, but I still, when you have your first child, you still it's a not much of a change. It is a change, but you still try and do a lot of things you did when you were pre-children, and now I've got my second child, my daughter. Things change a lot time-wise. My wife asked me to give up Sunday's betting, which is fair. It's a family day. It used to be my most profitable day. Soon junior sport and things are going to eat into my Saturdays, and you just can't lock yourself in the dungeon these days and do 10-hour days when you've got two little kids, and a lot more is expected of fathers these days. So the more I can build something that can be a bit more automated and a bit more, would be the better for my family life as well.
So have you considered outsourcing or, buying maps or buying an initial set of ratings from someone you trust and then adding a layer on top of that, which is obviously your input?
I've got a Tariq Database I use anyway in Ratings to Win. It's a great database, and it's got 6 years of history, and it's got all my video comments from since I've been on it the last 6 years. So I'm working on that at the moment. I put numbers on all the horses. It's in the maidens, and then I really target the maidens. So I'm really fine tune their numbers, but I do rate the other provincial classes and put a number on performance as well. Betfair run terrific functions down here for guys like us, to put us in a room with our contemporaries, and you speak to a lot of guys, and they like to pick up stuff off you, and you can pick up stuff off them. And what you said then is that, people have said, why don't you, those principles, spread your wings a bit, see if they apply to other classes, other jurisdictions. That's another thing I'm working on. So I've got out, and I ran a program on a trainer yesterday. He's been training a lot of winners, and so I thought, I'll see how he goes, and I wanted to target him down and bet on maidens, what I'm good at. But straight away I ran his stacks, and he was dynamite on first starters. Maidens were no good, but really good on other provincial classes. So I split off the first starters and ran them as their own system, and then ran the other system minus the maidens, which I'd never thought I'd do because I always target maidens. And so any time he has a runner in those things now that I've fine-tuned, I'll get an alert and see if that leads to an opportunity.
That's interesting. So it sounds like it's evolving, and you've got to evolve with the times. And do you look ahead 1, 3, 10 years down the line and think about where you need to get to?
Yeah, for sure, Jake. Well, this is only in recent. I thought, the way I was very lucky. I got off to a flyer, had a good edge back in 2013, 2014, 15. All was good. Probably up until about 18 months ago, it was all good. But as I said, the market's changed. The corporate bookmaking landscape's changed. The way they're putting up their prices. Minimum bet laws everyone can get on these days makes things tighter. Things are getting knocked off. You'd find one at Yarra Glen 3 or 4 years ago on a Saturday. You'd market 2s and they'd put up 10s, and you'd be able to get your bet on it to run 2s and win by 3 lengths. Well, that just doesn't happen anymore. So I tried to stick it out for another year, and in the last few months, I've tried to come up with a new way forward. And yeah, absolutely. It'd be a sad day if if I've ever got to go and get a job again, Jake. But I've got a family to support, and so that's first and foremost. But of course, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I love it. I love the puzzle of it, and been getting into the data side has actually invigorated me to some degree. You can get a bit stale just doing what you're doing, grinding away, pitting your wits against the computer models to some degree. So yeah, mate, I'd love to get something automated that I could just do a 40-hour week and spend a lot of time with my family and be profitable enough for us to have a good lifestyle.
So take me through the betting side. Do you utilize multiple accounts with multiple bookmakers to be able to get on, or are you just using the exchanges, or how do you go about when you're ready to place a bet?
Yeah, well, previously I used all avenues. I used the gut feel a bit early, try and head off the computer models or the teams if you think they were going to back one. So yeah, I've got a spread. I'm not a huge punter, so I've got 6 or 7 core corporates and the TAB. But the main ones I probably use are the TAB. They bet me the biggest limits and seem to bet me the fairest. And Betfair, I like betting late. As I said, I tried to move towards soaking up a bit more market intelligence into my betting to try and up it. So you sort of take a shorter price, but with the seeing that it's well fancied by the computer team. So Betfair, I enjoy it. I enjoy the anonymity of betting on Betfair. I'm not, you're profiled. I used to work in the corporate bookmaking world. I know how the risk management works. I know how they profile clients, what information they have on every client. That's none of that on Betfair. Your bets are anonymous. I really like that part of it. More, and all this stuff I'm testing is all the resulting I'm doing is at SP. So I'm not, so again, it'll be like, I'll be, looking a bit on Betfair and maybe some best tote somewhere if I can get it. I can't, Top Sport, the only sort of fair bookie I can get a best tote. I can't get a best tote bet anywhere. I'm restricted, but if I need it, they can look after me. They're another good betting place. Maybe, but I'll be trying a bit late and automated and late would be the go, Jake.
So how do you go about watching 5, 6, 7 corporates and Betfair and everything else all at one time?
Yeah, well, we've got a terrific betting platform here in Australia called Dynamic Odds. You can configure it to exactly how you like it. It updates to the second or particularly there. So you have it all lined up. It's such a great thing. It came along 10 years ago or something, and it's just a wonder. It is the betting marketplace. It used to be on track when I was 15 years ago. The betting marketplace was where I stood in front of me at Flemington and in Moonee Valley and wherever. Now the betting marketplace is there on Dynamic Odds. All the bookies are there. Betfair's, I've got Betfair front and centre. So so it's great, and you can bet through there as well. You can get the bets on quick. So it's a great tool for any punters out there. If you're in Australia, I highly recommend you get hold of it.
So take us through the differences between being on course with all the energy and adrenaline and the tracksuit gang are coming to place $50,000 bets, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, versus sitting at home watching Dynamic Odds on the screen and maybe seeing 350 into 320 into 290 and starts 260. How easy is it to get that same vibe and feeling and energy from on course where you can sense if something is going to go off or if it's hot versus on the screen where it probably flashes green and red and whatever else?
Oh, there's two parts to that, Jake. The one thing, the first point I'll say is about sitting at home and you're on your own in an office, or as we call them, dungeons, versus being at the track. It's one thing I really miss. The camaraderie at the track, the action, something always happening, especially back then when, you'd be standing there and then I just want to go off and the bookies would tell you to bet back and all the clerks would be crashing into each other. And I was there the day I got chills, which is one of the biggest plunges involved. So I was working for Simon Beasley at the time, and I was having a break from Anthony, and when Simon Beasley just started, and I was standing. It was the first race on, I think it was Melbourne Cup Day or Derby Day, one of those days. It was like 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah, the 2-year-old race.
Yeah, the 2-year-old race, and we're sitting there, and the prices, the prize bookies. So I just put a set of prizes up and trying to count the cash, and then one of the owners turns up behind us and says 5,000 on number 10, and Simon says, "Oh, you can have 500 on it." And then it was going off and off and off, and he just stood there, and then he said, "What price is it now? $6, give us another 5,000 on it." And then, so they bet, and then they just have we're all trying to run around and get on it ourselves, of course, all the clerks said, something's going on here. That's what you did as well. You tried to tune into that sort of stuff and compliment your wages by, so I miss all that. I mean, I sort of owned a few horses in the last few years and just getting out of the office, getting to the races, talking to the trainers, talking to other people, all the old bookies at the track. It's something you really miss sitting at home. The other is the weight of money. I mean, you just know that the way the corporates bet these days, there's no way anyone with any clever nous is having 50,000 on a horse. Pretty much at the country races I look at anyway. The most someone will probably get on if they can. One of the teams, if they got an even money favourite and they can bet in 15 bookies, or they can have to win 2,000 on a sale, they might be able to get 30 grand on an even money chance. So the weight of money's not there, so the excitement's not there. Reading between the lines and the market moves to the way they bet now is they follow Betfair late. They have a fishing expedition early, and then they just follow Betfair to late. And the recreational dollar rules sort of, they can get $5,000 out of a recreational punter and the price will stay there. They get $50 out of a smart punter and the price is 20s into 10s. So definitely not the same excitement, mate. But it's just the landscape and how it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. You mentioned a little bit before about
some of the camaraderie and even some of the events you've been to. Do you have a mentor in this space that you can go to, or have you kept those relationships from past, or even do you mentee some others that are coming up and learn from them? What's the relationship building process like these days when you spend a lot of time in the dungeon, I would imagine?
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky, as you probably know. A great guy from Sydney, Darren Potter, moved down here maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, and he was doing some stuff for what was back then called the Punters show. And anyway, he's moved down here, and another great guy you've had on the show, Anthony Jupp, asked me a few years ago, said, look, this Darren Potter's come down from Sydney, the Melbourne Cup's coming up, we'd like to do a Melbourne Cup preview, do you want to be a part of it? And there's me and another terrific guy who's now a racing steward, a betting steward up in Sydney, Lee Dalton, so I think there was the four of us, and yeah, so that was good fun, and we potted the hell out of Prince of Penzance because Michelle was on it, and of course, home it went, nothing surer, so, but...
you weren't on your own with that one.
No, 100-1 winner in a Melbourne Cup, how big. But, yeah, so I got to know Darren Potter, and then Juppy Potts and I used to do a few shows together, and as it's turned out, yeah, we do a YouTube show. I now do it with Darren Potter. It's great. Every second Monday I get out of the house and get to the Emerald Hotel, which is a great racing pub in Melbourne, run by some great racing people, Andy Lewis and his family, and yeah, and we chat about, and chat about racing and different things, and then we, once the camera's down, I pick Potts' brain, and he probably does the same with me, and we run all sorts of things by each other, and it's a great outlet for me. He's a great guy, really helped me, really knowledgeable. Actually, you've had him on the show, so most people, if they don't, go back and have a listen to his podcast. It was terrific. There's a lot to be learnt from Darren, and through the show, yeah, I get a bit of a profile on Twitter. Get some young guys contacting me, asking me advice, asking me, think different things, and I see that as a bit of a mentoring role. Always happy to help and grow the game, as we say, and give something back. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on a few things already, but what do you sort of self-assess or self-diagnose as some of the biggest challenges that you or someone in your position, might face in the future?
The wagering landscapes is probably the thing that's changing and making it tougher and tougher. There's a consolidation going on there, obviously, and they're getting their prices are sort of they're putting a lot of work into their data and their quants and their maths guys, and their prices are getting more efficient. So that's a challenge to try and they're protecting their margins. I think the race fields legislations we have in Victoria, and now with the point of consumption tax, so the fees levied on those bookies have now made them really get tougher and tougher. But we're lucky in Victoria. I mean, Victoria's seem to be the state that's leading the way with their relationships with wagering operators, with their taxation, things like that. So I think I've got a good, the industry down here feels really good at the moment. Other states have got their challenges, but no, I think you could say growing the game, but I think it's with the advent the free-to-air TV channels are really hungry for sport. They're really, with the proliferation of Netflix and other things like that, they've sort of made targeted live sport and things like that as a go-to. So there's going to be more exposure there. The corporate bookmakers are terrific advertisers for the industry. So they pour a lot into marketing. So the young generation are exposed to racing and things like that in that side of things. So I think there's I've got a good feeling about the industry down here at the moment, Jake.
So you've been watching racing a long time. I've got to ask, Black Caviar versus Winx. Are you able to split them? Do you have a preference? What's your thoughts on the best horse in recent times?
I've backed them both once, Jake. I backed Black Caviar the day I was on the drink at the casino, and she was $1.20 or something. The night I was late at night. The race in the UK. I was trying to pinch.
Almost got beat. Is that the one?
Almost got beaten. Yeah, the closest anyone ever got to her. Almost got beat. And then Winx one day, someone's there's a moral list day. She was just like picking it up off the ground. I don't think it was the day Red Excitement skipped 6 in front, and she was still 3 off it at the 100-metre mark, and just fell in. And I said, "Oh my God, Father!" Anyway, so look, I love the way. It's more a lie, not matching their abilities. I warmed to Winx. I just love the way she travels up and I was lucky enough to meet Peter Ty in Darwin. I was lucky enough, Nick Heathcote and the Betfair guys. I went up to the Betfair, the Darwin Cup with them this year, and got to meet Peter Ty, and he's a lovely guy, a lovely racing guy. So had a good chat with him about the great mare that was leading into this last spring when she won the Cox Plate. I love the way she goes about what she does, mate.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's certainly a tough one. And I think I saw the other night, or last night even, that Winks won World Horse of the Year or something like that. So
she did she? Yep.
So she's doing all right. Dan, thank you very much for coming on. It's been fun chatting. You know, I didn't tell you this in the beginning, but I went to Essendon Grammar, so we're arch rivals because of that.
We are too.
I was going to ask a question about Mr. Carroll and some of the old days, but we'll chat about that some other time, certainly.
Well, I was famously ironed out by Dustin Fletcher in a schoolboy game at the showgrounds, Essendon Grammar versus Assumption, and another mate, Paul DiMartino, who was watching it, said it was like Stan Magro and Jezelenko. He just laid me. I just ran straight into him and ended up flat in my bum. But anyway, mate, they're great memories.
Awesome. All right, Dan, appreciate it. Thanks again for coming on.
Terrific, Jake. Great to chat with you.